to start by showing you just a rapid-fire slideshow of about 90 images. That's going to take 3 minutes. And while we're cycling through them, I'm going to give you just a little bit of context about what each series is about. Right, my work is primarily influenced by my unique childhood of growing up the youngest of 10 children in western Montana on a farm. And most of my photographs are based on real-life experiences or incidents that were relayed to me by either other family members or people in my life. So let's go ahead and start it. So the first series was based on a story that my 2 older sisters told me. And when they were adolescent girls, they found this lost or abandoned suitcase near the river's edge behind our house. And knowing that it was a valuable treasure, they took it home, they hid it under the bed, and often at night they would dress up in this woman's clothing. Ultimately, the weight of harboring this secret forced them to return it to the river where they found it. In this series, I'm revisiting a story in which my sister was horribly attacked when a hornet's nest was disrupted in the barn behind our house. She was stung over 100 times. This series was influenced by my love for Nancy Drew books as I was growing up, and my characters are embarking on forbidden knowledge, which is a metaphor for the precarious transition from girl to woman. A mother taking a carload of children to a birthday party while a fire erupts under the hood influenced that work, and here I'm taking articles from a backseat to reference painterly still lifes. So I'm very enchanted by the childhood experience. I feel like my memory growing up, it was particularly vivid, almost cinematic. So here we are transitioning into some of my commercial work and work that I've done for either advertisements or magazines. And you can see how I'm still retaining some of my original aesthetic through art direction and casting and location scouting. This is a project I just did for the Northwest Greyhound Rescue Adoption Team. And I transitioned out of the fine art realm into more commercial and editorial work about 4 years ago. It never really occurred to me that I could make a living taking photographs. This is a photograph that I recently discovered in one of my dad's old photo albums. And it's so much more than a snapshot of my family on a camping trip somewhere in western Montana. It's a real 1977 moment forever frozen in time. My mom is on the left, cracking eggs to prepare breakfast. There's a flower decorating her hair, no doubt a gift from one of my older siblings. I would be born later that year, and as I look at this photograph, I wonder if she knew yet that she was pregnant with me. My older sister, with her expressive fingers popping out, would start taking piano lessons when she was 6 years old, and is now a professional pianist. Her hand's still one of her most defining characteristics. My 2 older brothers, Jerry and Jesse, are enthralled by something they probably captured in the creek nearby while my sisters Shelley and Julie look on. Maybe it's a bucket of minnows, maybe it's some salamanders. They're pretty prevalent growing up, but have since, their population has declined immensely in the last few decades. And then my brother Nate, just smiling like a little cherub, reminds me that he's continued to retain this sweet disposition as a father of 4. Now, in the backdrop, we see the infamous Suburban, which hauled my family of 12 every summer from western Montana to Minnesota. It hauled a barnyard full of animals to and from the Western Montana Fair, and darn near killed my whole family during the carbon monoxide incident. So looking at this photo, I'm reminded of how much I love photography and how powerful it is, and why I've devoted my entire life to trying to improve and perfect my craft. So, I have a few words of advice that I want to part with you today. For any of you that would like to move in the direction of a creative life. And the first one is stay curious. Get inspired by the wonderful world around you. I think that's increasingly a little bit more challenging to do in today's climate, when we're so fixated by screens in the digital realm. And I think that finding beauty and wonder in the real world is where I personally find most of my inspiration. Finding beauty in little things like a flicker of light coming through your window, or the sensation of your cat's soft fur as you pet it, or the cacophony of birds communicating with each other when you're walking to school. If you find that you're someone who has trouble with boredom, or feel like you have to be constantly stimulated, I urge you to nurture your curiosity. I think that this will be really helpful. Another thing for creative people is creativity it kind of ebbs and flows, and it's like a butterfly. You can't really chase it and catch it, but rather if you're still, it can land on your shoulder. And what I mean by that is recognize those times or activities in your life when you feel most creative. So maybe it's when you're exercising, or maybe when you're driving, or maybe when you're taking a shower. For me, I find that right when I'm on the cusp of falling asleep, it's a really particularly fertile time for me and my creative thoughts. And so I keep a notebook right by my bedside, right on my bedside table, and I will jot down ideas because I know from experience that I won't remember them the next day. Find your voice. Take pride in the fact that there's no one else like you. There's never been anyone like you, and there never will be. That's pretty profound. And that your life experiences and your story and your narrative has value and worth and is important to tell. So dig into your personal experiences for inspiration rather than trying to endlessly predict the latest trends. Sticking to what you know and what you care about will ultimately make the creative process more fulfilling and make more successful art. Seek others who inspire you. So this is really, really important. While I think being an artist is an incredibly fulfilling life, it's also not an easy one at times. There's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of uncertainty, and so it can be pretty intense. So I urge you to try to attract people into your life who can encourage and inspire you, who understand and believe what you're doing, who speak your language. I used to teach at the college level, and I always noticed that those classes that I taught that had really strong bonds and a really powerful dynamic within the group would always make the most compelling work. Avoid fear-based decisions. Often it is when we are afraid of something that we find that it offers us really profound lessons in learning. If you find that you don't want to do something even though it interests you because you're afraid, just do it anyway. To be completely candid, I don't particularly love public speaking. Kind of scares me a little bit. But I never turn down an invitation to talk about my work because I don't want to contend with the fallout of having to admit to myself that I didn't accept an opportunity because of my own personal fear. Be grateful. Practice coming from a place of abundance and gratitude rather than a place of deficiency and dissatisfaction. Direct your focus on what you have, your talents, opportunities, and relationships, rather than on what you don't have. And by the way, people really love to work with gracious people, either your collaborators or your assistants or people who are your clients. And finally, always do your best. And I know this sounds cliche, but it will make the experience so much more fulfilling. If you really truly believe in something and you work your hardest, then you're going to walk away with pride and no regrets. And so sometimes projects have more at stake and sometimes they have less at stake. But I find that if I just continue to always do the best that I can do, and I'm never going to be the best in my field, but just doing the best that I personally can do makes the creative process ultimately more fulfilling. Thank you, and I will chat with you later.